Glory to Jesus Christ. My name is Bishop Nectarios, and today we're going to take a walk through our ancient faith. So I had a question from my last video. The noise you heard in the background was my cat wandering around, serenading us to sleep like he does every night. He just wanders around the house making noise for whatever reason. Go him. Now the main topic for today is the right to life, but more than that, it's the idea of eugenics. Now, there are people who hold to the idea that if you are born with disabilities, that you are a burden on our society, and that you should be removed before birth. And there are people who believe that the world is such a dark and disturbing place that you shouldn't bring a child into it, which is incredibly cynical, but that's aside from the point. Now, I've heard these points argued by people who had severe disabilities and by people who were given up into the foster system themselves. And both of them very much wanted to live, so they can speak for themselves. They're all on YouTube. You can Google them if you want to. But this idea of eugenics, that if something doesn't cut the mustard, it should be dispensed with, is dangerous. And most people who think that they're very scientific aren't really thinking this through. Now, to give a bit of background on this, I'm a big fan of history. Always have been. When I was in school, everybody else thought history was a useless subject. Not many people paid attention to it. But the thing is, although we have new technology and new gadgets and new toys, humans are the same as they were thousands of years ago. Nothing has changed. It's one of the reasons why Scripture is still so useful. It's one of the reasons why the teaching of a saint from 1500 years ago holds true today. And this idea, very Spartan-esque, that someone who is deformed or someone who will not have the benefit of a loving home is therefore less than, is dangerous because it begins there. Right? You start with the idea that these people don't have a right to life because of some reason that you've concocted in your head that they don't matter or they're not valued. And then it becomes people who do not have a certain level of intelligence because those people will never inhabit certain echelons and their potential is limited. So let's get rid of them too. And then it gets on to selective breeding, because then you would take the two most intelligent people and pair them together with the understanding that genetics will most likely breed someone with intelligence, and you'll lose the general ability to choose someone that you love for yourself. And that can go either way. Maybe you want to breed two extremely strong people together. The point being, no matter how you want to add it up, the eugenics was very popular. However, it fell out of popularity due to the events of World War II, because the Nazi Party was a big proponent of eugenics. They saw a very pure species of humanity, and they saw what they considered to be genetic defects, and they were attempting to purify the human race of what they considered to be defective genetics and bloodlines. And because of that, they went after not just cultural, but religious, and of course they went after political people too. They went after gypsies because people looked down on gypsies. They went after Jews because they were a scapegoat for the drama that was going on at the time. They went after blacks. They went after anyone that was considered defective by their understanding of it. They had a whole system of classification of who was considered Aryan and who was not. And so as a result of their behavior, this idea of eugenics started to fall out of favor. And thank God it did. Because How long is it going to take us before we decide that the elderly, who have lived a full life, contributed to society their whole life, and are now enjoying the benefits of their retirement, how long before we start to consider those people a burden on society and now we need to put them down whether they want to or not? Oh, and then people with chronic illnesses. Obviously, they're going to take a lot of care, and we need to put them down too. Oh, and people with fatal and terminal illnesses that could live for years longer. It's going to cost a lot of money to keep them alive in the interim. Best to kill them too. And then criminals. Whether they are in the beginning, it would be just a level below death row, right? The guys that did things that almost got on death row. But pretty soon we would start to expand a little bit because these guys are a burden on society, right? And they are considered defective because they are not law-abiding citizens. And pretty soon, if you yourself are not a genetically perfect, eternally healthy, eternally young person, then you will be weeded out. And it won't happen all at once. And not everything I'm saying will happen. But over time, the definition of what is considered defective or a burden on society will continue to grow. And as a direct result, our freedoms will diminish, innocent people will lose their lives, and in the end, we are going to be ultimately self-defeating. Where the right to life is concerned, whether you're Roman Catholic or Eastern Orthodox, both churches have adamantly defended the right to life for everyone, from the meanest, nastiest prisoner to the most innocent child. And there are people who go by human logic, who point out that maybe this person has done a terrible crime and they deserve death. And that's a problem, because we're getting into the business of deciding for ourselves who is willing or who is worthy to live and who is worthy to die. And there are times where we start to feel morally self-righteous and we start to judge it. Have we noticed lately that certain political groups have started making statements similar to that? I don't care whether you are left or right, there are people on both sides of the aisle, liberal and Republican, who are making comments about how the people on the other side are traitors and they deserve the death penalty, or I don't know, insert whatever hateful rhetoric you want here or there. But in the end, both sides are starting to devalue the value of each other's lives. And they're starting to see each other as the enemy, which naturally breeds animosity. And sooner or later, the division will be deep enough that it can't be healed unless humanity resorts to an old-fashioned method of population control we call civil war. Which sounds harsh to say, but that's what's going to happen. You cannot make two people bitter enemies and remove any possibility of reunification or making peace for long periods of time, because sooner or later those people are going to fight it out. War is a huge method of population control. We see it all the time. Not that long ago, ethnic cleansings were happening in parts of Africa, Southeast Asia, and they were happening because one group of people decided that another group of people were not culturally relevant, or that they were genetically defective, or that they were the ancient enemy of their particular group, family, tribe, clan, whatever, and therefore it's time to finish them off because at the current moment they're in power. And this is when we start to see atrocities. This idea of eugenics has never went away. It is a evil idea. And we do it all the time with animals, so we figure, why not with people? We genetically modify our animals by selective breeding and by literal genetic modification. So we figure, why wouldn't it work with people? Thing is, a person is not quite the same as a cow, is it? Heck, sometimes we treat animals better than we treat people. We will treat a dog better than a hobo any day of the week. We will feed a hungry animal. We'll let people starve. But that's part of the cruelty and the fallen nature of humanity. This idea that we can decide who is worthy of life is so dangerous. And it's a topic that falls close to home myself because I myself have medical issues that prevent me from, say, digging ditches for a living. So you could make the argument that because I have medical issues myself, that I'm not fit to live. You can come up with any reason you want. All that is required is that you have men with weapons backing you up. Our government rules through force. It does not rule with the consent of the governed. That's a fantasy. So all it takes is for one person to say this is the way it's going to be, and these guys over here say so too. And boom, that's the way it is. Think about it. Are you allowed to opt out of taxes? No. The government will eventually come after you with men with weapons. Are you allowed to simply succeed from the government? No. They will do that same thing, come after you with weapons. Are you allowed to simply go off into left field and do whatever the hell you want? No, there are laws binding you to common behavior, and if you do not follow the law, you will wind up on the other end of a butt-kicking boot. And our government rules using these methods, and that's just the way it is. It's necessary, and it's necessary because there are people who mistake kindness for weakness. Now, I'm getting off topic a little bit, but it all ties in at the end, I swear. The idea that this person or that person is not worthy of life has been done again and again and again. And it's always been done by someone in power who themselves will never be targeted for liquidation. And they are assured of the fact that they're going to be safe. So why do they care about anybody else? And that is one huge problem because our politicians already decide to opt themselves out of the laws that they make. Let that sink in for a moment. They craft a law that they themselves do not have to obey. They have that ability under law, which I think they gave themselves because they are the government that crafts the laws. All it takes is one person in power to say someone doesn't matter, and the cycle of death begins again and again and again. And here's your chance to stop it. I know a lot of people give crap to the people who are pro-life, but think about it for a minute, what you're deciding to do. This isn't a minor issue. This is a human being. This is a person who is made in the image of God. This is a living, breathing person who has thoughts, who has feelings. And I know people are going to roll their eyes with feelings. I get you. You are ending everything they could ever be. You are ending every possibility that they could have contributed something to society. You know, I saw an article not long ago. A person with severe autism had worked in McDonald's for 30, 40 years and had retired after working their whole life. Now here's a person that, according to modern sentiment, should be destroyed before they're ever allowed to live because they couldn't possibly contribute to society. They're going to be a burden on our society. Ironically, all the places where there's an absolute lack of any kind of wealth happen to be the most pro-life places, and all the places where we have an absolute ridiculous overabundance that we so much that we throw it away. We throw away more food than we eat. We are the ones who are thinking life doesn't matter. Of course, to be fair, in most of those same countries that are pro-life are where warlords and terrorist groups are murdering innocent people, but there needs to be an understanding that that's wrong too. Of course, we have the same thing happen in our country. We just call it criminal behavior, and we decide to sweep it under the rug as something undesirable. Okay. Of course, we're a first world country, so we can't talk about those kinds of things. That doesn't happen here, except it does, and it happens a lot. Just in this tiny little town, it's not uncommon to hear some news article about crazy crime happening. That, too, is a case of someone who's decided someone else does not matter. But everyone matters. All life is sacred. Whether you are a death row inmate, whether you are an innocent child, your life is sacred. Your life matters. You carry the divine spark within you. You are an image bearer of God. You are made in the image of God, and you have a right to exist. You have a right to decide how you will contribute to society. You have a right to decide for yourself, not to have someone else decide arbitrarily that your life is valueless. It's because of reasons like that I cannot understand the pro-choice argument. Especially when I hear people get on and weigh in their opinion that are part of these groups that pro-choicers sit there and say, you don't matter. Oh, it's my choice. And now, at this point, everyone's going to bring up the unfortunate reality of a child being conceived through force. And to that, I agree that if the parent does not feel that they can care for that child, that the child needs to be given to a family that can care for that child. And you know what? Before you get yourself in a tight wad about it, consider this. You're deciding to end the life of a child who has committed no wrong, whose only crime is existing, because a person who has existed on this planet for a number of years decided to do evil. Imagine if someone broke into your home and stole your things, and you decided to off the next door neighbor instead. That's essentially what you're doing. You are deciding that a life that was conceived through pain and suffering is not worth it. You are deciding that a life that was forcibly created isn't worth it. But the one that's actually guilty of causing crime and pain isn't the one that's being put to death. It's the innocent. And I already know people are going to get mad at me about this, and that's okay. To have a different point of view, to have a different opinion, I get it. This is the world according to Alex. This is the world according to Bishop Nectarios, my Christian name. This is the world according to Christian faith. Now, maybe I'm not right. Maybe I'm totally wrong. But I believe fearsomely that all life is sacred, including yours. And I feel that to simply discard someone because we've decided that they don't matter, that's stopping. That's got to stop. That has to end before our society grows the idea and you are the one that they decide isn't worthy of living. Anyway, this has been a difficult topic for us. I hope we can get through this without everybody throwing fireballs at me and getting mad at me and yelling at me and swearing at me. I don't really care if you guys have a different opinion. Of course, abuse isn't going to be tolerated or accepted. I'll just delete your comment. You can argue with me all you want. It's okay. I'm pretty well seated in what I believe. I'm not going to get offended if you think differently than me. However, as I said, no abuse. This is the second time I'm saying it. This is a difficult topic to discuss. I understand that. You can discuss it respectfully. So I've said that enough. That's it for today. God loves you and I love you. We'll talk next time.